Good morning, everyone. My name is James Simmons. I'm with the Department of Information Technology. I'm here to present the next speaker of this session. Hope you're enjoying today's Security Awareness Day for Fairfax County. I would like to reiterate some housekeeping rules before we get started. Today's session is Security on the Go, Cloud and Mobile Computing. Please silence all devices. At the conclusion of the presentation, please leave your survey with one of the members of the IT team, anybody who has a shirt like mine. So I would suggest that you exit at the top of the stairs. They will be collecting your surveys at that area. Please visit our sponsors and thank them for helping to make this event a success. And now I would like to introduce Kevin McPeak. Kevin supports the government customers and as a technical SME for a reputational-based malware filtering, endpoint management, endpoint security, data loss prevention, encryption, mobile device management, mobile application management, secure mobile content delivery, and defense technologies. Kevin has 2 master's degrees, one he's earned from Johns Hopkins University and the other from Virginia Tech. He's also a part-time PhD candidate at Virginia Tech's Northern Virginia Extension campus. Prior to working for Symantec, Kevin worked for several system integrators including CACI, Lockheed Martin, and Alpha Insight. Additionally, Kevin is the U.S. Army Reservist, Chief Warrant Officer, a CW3, with more than 22 years of continuous service. In that military capacity, he's a veteran of both Operation Freedom in 2013 and Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2010 and 2011. Please join me in welcoming Kevin McPeak.
Thanks, James. Really appreciate it. James, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I want to thank everyone here in the audience for being here to hear about mobile on the go. A little bit of additional housekeeping before I jump into my presentation. So at the conclusion of my talk at 12:30, there's going to be a raffle out in the hallway. So please hold on to your tickets and please be out there for the raffle. You can win a nice prize. So I know I'm here, and I'm actually a long-term resident of Fairfax, and I'm here amongst a lot of people that are interested in cybersecurity and fellow cyber practitioners. So I feel I can be open and share something that actually impacted me directly. So as you know, with the seat of our U.S. federal government so close by, and the Virginia economy being, and Fairfax County particularly being such a strong economic engine of growth for our country, there are a lot of dedicated cyber adversaries that even live and reside in this area as well as target those systems in this area. And targeting mobile devices is actually part of that concern, right? So this is what actually happened to me. As James mentioned, I work for Symantec, and I was issued a company purchased iPad where I could do some company work, and it had security components on it and things of that nature. So it's a weekend, and I know I have some things I have to get done. And someone in my family said, we have to go run some errands. Can you just pull up in front of the store in the service lane, and I'm just going to run in real quick. So I'm doing some work, and at the time my 7-year-old son was in the back seat, and I come home, and later that evening he's in my device and he's logged in and everything, and so he was that advanced cyber adversary. What he did was he was in his car seat, sort of elevated, and he shoulder surfed, and he got my PIN, and he was able to get my credentials, and he was able to get in and sort of, muck around in my. So to my knowledge, that's the only time I've actually been, owned by a cyber adversary was my son. So, when you have a breach or something of that nature, you have to do some, remediation. You have to do some steps so it doesn't happen again. So I sat him down and we talked about it, and I said, you did a great job. Now Daddy's got to change all my passwords. I said, now if you do it again, you're going to get a spank. So that was a pretty inexpensive remediation. So with that, I'll jump into security on the go, cloud and mobile computing. So it's a pretty aggressive agenda, but the whole idea here is to cover things associated with your mobile devices. Those things are considerations for smartphones, tablets, as well as Internet of Things, embedded devices. And I know within Fairfax County there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done. And I also know people want to be effective when they're at home, to be able to do work and also have some fun and not to, have a work-life balance between productivity and living an enjoyable life. So in no way should anything I say today be construed that I'm some type of a Luddite, that I'm anti-technology. I'm not. I myself, I have my Android device. I also have an iPhone. I have an iPad. I have other tablets. So I'm a big advocate of mobile, but I'm also a big advocate of doing things securely. I'm also an advocate of storing data in the cloud. It does, to a large degree, reduce total attack surface, but at the same time, doing it in ways that make sense from a security standpoint. So let's talk about some of the risks associated with cloud specifically. And I think most people by now, they get the message that if you take a photo or a video, either like a selfie or someone else does that for you, if they upload that to the public internet, even if later you take it down or you ask your friend to take it down because maybe you're at that holiday party and you have the lampshade on your head, or dancing a little too close with a coworker or something like that, you want that offline. But I think we all realize once it goes up into a public space like Facebook or Instagram, it's essentially gone. It's up there forever. But what I would also challenge is there are components of mobile malware that end up on mobile devices, tablets, and phones that you may not be aware is actually running sort of under the covers on your mobile device. So even if you take pictures and you don't upload, I would be very cautious. I would make an assumption that if you have a network-connected tablet or phone and you take a photo, you should treat it the same way as if you had uploaded it to the cloud. So again, be very careful of what pictures you take and who you allow to take pictures of you. Other concerns specific to identity theft. I myself, I do some online banking and other financial activities, book travel, rental cars, lodging, things like that, using mobile apps. And also these things, if there's apps that are interoperating on your system, that are interacting with the mobile device operating system, these are areas of concern. So, again, no one enjoys, being a target of identity theft or such a victim. Also, consider this. What happens if your device is lost or stolen, or if you don't remember your PIN and you're trying to do some type of recovery? So each of the companies that offer mobile devices usually have like a Go Find Me or a Reset Me kind of feature function. So I would encourage everybody to develop good familiarization with those processes. A lot of vendors recommend you keep the box, don't throw it out, because it's got, usually has taped on it the serial number and the unique identifier numbers of that device, because it's not just about the phone number associated with it, it's also about the network identity of that device. But again, things that, think it through, things associated with recovery. Now, as far as storing data up in cloud architecture, it's a different model. Within Fairfax County, if you have your own specific data centers, you control that physical space. Who goes in and out? I saw James and some others, with the official, identity badge, so they can go, that will work in certain areas to go in certain rooms. But when you provide things to a cloud architecture, at that point it's based on what we call SLA, service level agreement, where there's specific contractual terms and conditions of what you can do to scan and secure that cloud, and then with the CSP, the cloud service provider, what things they have to do from a security perspective. So as your personal data or your work data is sort of sloshing between, on your mobile device, at your desktop, on your servers, and then also up into cloud architecture, really, pay attention to those sort of fine print and make sure that the cloud service provider is providing that type of security. And do the right research, do the right investigation in selecting cloud service providers, and check their reputation and what are their cyber practices and how do they build out their architecture. So again, there are at some of these conferences for white hat hacker type things where there's, and perhaps some gray and black hat attendees as well. But the whole idea of, are there ways to exploit virtual environments? And there's been, if you Google this or look at this on YouTube videos, you'll see that they will come up with some, especially with older versions, older flavors of virtualized platforms or cloud-based platforms, methodologies to scrape RAM space from adjacent virtual infrastructure, things of that nature. So again, just working with your cloud service provider, making sure you understand that they are using such best cyber practice. And then, of course, mobile malware, which I'm going to discuss in a good bit of depth. So what I'd like to do is use a framework around the letter W. So I'm going to give 5 Ws, the who, what, when, where, and why of mobile malware, and then how it can impact you as a user and impact Fairfax County as far as government agency operations that have government data or private citizen data touching these mobile devices. So the first one is the who can be impacted by it. Yesterday I was at a conference and the speaker after me was actually from Apple, and he talked at length about some of the very good things that Apple's doing around security. And yet, within the past 30 days, there was a major exploit associated with an Apple app called WeChat, W-E, and then the word chat, which is not so common here in the US, but in East Asia, it's sort of like a social media coordinating for, hey, what are we doing this afternoon, that type of thing. So WeChat's very commonly used in East Asia, and the proper development framework for developing and updating mobile apps would be to go to the authorized Apple site and download the Xcode framework to do that app development in. Some app developers in East Asia were connecting to a different server, which turned out to be rogue, downloading what was called Xcode Ghost. So they were doing extensive app development, and what happened was that framework had malware embedded deep within the code and where it interfaced with the mobile devices. So when then it actually made it onto the iTunes store and then impacted users, it's estimated that 500 million Apple users were impacted by this within the past month. So that's greater than the population of the entire United States were impacted with mobile malware within the last 30 days. And again, mostly that was in Asia, but perhaps some people here, even in Fairfax County, could have been impacted by it if they were using that type of app. BlackBerry prides themselves on good cybersecurity, and yet there have been exploits against BlackBerry. Android is where we're seeing a lot of the malware develop. Most malware for mobile is developed for the Android platform, and I'll get into that in a few slides later. And also, Windows Mobile. So Department of Homeland Security has done some analysis of the various platforms from a security standpoint. And I remember a previous version of Windows Mobile where they actually showed a certain type of exploit that Microsoft then went on to fix in future releases. But again, think of it this way. Every time there's an OS, an operating system upgrade, the overall attack surface changes. The APIs, the application programming interfaces, will have some changes to it. Every time the apps that are installed and are running on your system change, you'll also have a situation where there's new code, new chances for vulnerabilities. Maybe they do an update that actually reduces the attack surface, improves the security in so many spaces, and they do a really nice job of doing that in, let's say, a new release. But maybe when they do all that, maybe they open up something that you weren't even aware of or considering before. So it's almost like the concept of painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You start at one end and you start painting and you get to the other end. So cybersecurity and mobile security is like that. Once you start working on it, by the time you get to the end, the beginning is starting to rust because there's been storms and other things. So nothing in this field is static. It's constantly changing. Every day there's applications have new updates and operating systems. I was talking with another professional colleague of mine, and we were discussing what it must be like to be an emergency room surgeon. So somebody comes in, they're in tremendous pain, there's something with their physical body that has failed or is damaged. They put them under anesthesia, they open them up, they let, for example, remove an appendix or fix a heart or whatever the situation is. And then that person gets their follow-up 30 days, 90 days later. They're doing so much better. And what a sense of achievement and accomplishment for that surgeon to say, I took human suffering and I fixed it, and that person's happy, they're back at work, back with their family, and they have a great life ahead of them. The cyber profession is not like that. You can do everything right and be fully engaged, work very hard, and you lie in bed at night and you're like, okay, well, what's going to happen tomorrow? Because it just keeps changing. So it's a fascinating field in. There's actually, the Chinese have a phrase, may you live in interesting times, and it's both a blessing and a curse. And I think those that are cyber practitioners actually experience that. So again, all of the platforms can be impacted as far as the who goes, and then all types of users. Even I mentioned my son. I also have a daughter that's 6. She has her own tablet. So children have mobile devices, workplace devices, and it's not Rubik's Cube, right? It's not a fad that's going to go away. So both, all types of platforms and all types of users can be impacted. So who's creating and distributing the mobile malware? Well, of course, the malware developers themselves, those that operate botnets and spam relay systems, espionage rings. I'm sure hostile foreign intelligence agencies would be interested in what's going on in Fairfax County, the sort of the SOP that's used by emergency first responders, things of that nature. So that's an area of concern. Mules are those who actually either willingly, unwillingly, wittingly, or unwittingly, or perhaps partial knowledge, are involved in transporting malicious code from inside, let's say inside of a government building that's secure, or across state lines or international boundaries. Cyber thieves, there's money to be made in especially industrial espionage, stealing intellectual property, sending it to other countries so that they can very rapidly do that rapid manufacturing, produce knockoff products that come back to the US and degrade our economy as a nation. And if you think about it, if you have a really nice sports car and you're going down, there's no traffic on 66, right? So if you're like zipping along, perhaps at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday, that would be the case. But in any event, you're zipping along. Imagine if you had a parachute attached to your rear bumper. I mean, that is what industrial espionage is. It's a great drag on the US economy. And of course, hacktivists. And I'm not in any way trying to make any ideological statements, but you've probably heard the phrase, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So there are those that for ideological reasons, not even if there's any money involved, but will be interested in attacking Fairfax County's IT infrastructure, of which mobile devices and cloud would be a big component of that. So a little bit about talking about the what, just a little bit about taxonomy. If you're reading various reports from industry vendors, academic institutions, government agencies, I referenced DHS, there's also NIST and NSA have some publicly available, open on their website type articles and things. But you'll see these terminologies being thrown around about malware, specific things like family, variant, samples. And unfortunately, they don't mean the same thing to all the authors. So if you're doing apples to apples or oranges to oranges comparison, it's important to understand that if one article says one thing, like, hey, we identified this many variants, and then another organization says, if you're comparing 3,000 to 12, you might say, wow, this other group's doing much better malware research. But that's not necessarily the case. So just as sort of a background, so where I work, if there's malware developed, we consider it a family. If there's trivial or moderate iterations of it, it would be known as variants. But think about this. Nobody has a perfectly useful functioning iPhone and says, hey, I'm really enjoying using this phone. I think I'll install some malware so that my device can become unstable. I can have my identity stolen and my bank account wiped out. No one in their right mind does that, right? So what we're seeing is malware gets developed and the variants of it get developed. But when it gets embedded in different apps, and you can see here in the imagery, like things like book sharing and photo management and certain games and things like that. So that same malicious mobile code as samples can be embedded across. So again, that's the taxonomy I'm familiar with. If you do some really nice reports from some of the graduate computer science programs in Virginia and other places, they might use those same terminology, but those same words, but they could mean totally different things. So the growth rate of Android malware. So I recognize this is a busy slide, and perhaps for the handout you can kind of see some of the statistics. But just the key takeaway. So the gray is there's 2013, and then the blue is 2014, right? So doing the analysis of malware growth, and you can see, not in every example, but for the most part, what we're seeing is growth in families, variants, samples, malware types for different operating systems. Basically the whole plethora. There's growth associated year over year, quarter over quarter. So, when children are playing soccer, when they're little, they all run to where the ball is, but when they get older, they get better, they go to where the ball's going. So malware developers are doing the same sort of thing. They're looking at more and more people doing, some people, especially like senior leaders in organizations, they're traveling, they're going to meetings and conferences, they're in airports. They might do all of their work on their mobile device. They hardly ever go to an office to their desk and log into a computer. They're doing it all through their phones or their tablets. So the malware developers, they recognize that's where I need to go if my goal is espionage, making money, stealing intellectual property, et cetera. So Symantec and some others have done some extensive studies about the available attack surface for different types of devices. And what we actually determined was, and this is looking at several versions over time, not necessarily the most current release, but over time what we see is that there are more potential vulnerabilities and sort of theoretical vulnerabilities, things of that nature, associated with the Apple iOS platform than with Android or with Windows or BlackBerry. And yet, so that you'll see an equal sign, and then you'll see the sort of the red Ghostbusters go through it. The growth in mobile malware development is not impacting iOS, despite what happened with WeChat within the past 30 days. But over the past 2 years, most malware development has been around Android. So why is that, right? So globally, Android has a very commanding and growing market share. It's an open architecture. It allows other manufacturers to OEM developers to build different devices and provide things through the local telecommunications companies in those nations or regions of our country, things of that nature. Apple's a more closed ecosystem where devices are managed, they're purchased through Apple, managed through Apple. So it's a closed ecosystem. The other thing is there's cultural factors. Apple users, when they, statistically, right, of course there's exceptions to this, but when they see that red circle with like a white number 1 or a number 2 in it telling them there's updates, Apple users tend to be pretty good as a group within the US of installing those updates and staying current. What we're seeing with Android platform is there's sometimes more steps. You have to go in and do a couple more things and go into your settings. So a lot of users just say, the heck with it, I'm not going to upgrade. I'm happy with my app the way it is. Maybe they had a bad experience with an app getting updated and then they didn't like the functionality of it. So they have some frustration, so they say, never again, I'll do any updates. Another thing we see is some users with Android will allow their telecommunications contract to expire. They continue to use the device, but they're only using the Wi-Fi, right, to connect to it. So they're no longer getting those updates that are percolating from Google to the OEM, to the telecommunications providers. They're cut off, that sort of update support goes away. So for all of these various reasons, we're seeing much more growth of malware development for Android than any of the other, really than all the other platforms combined. And the other thing, I did say that the large market penetration of Android worldwide, but within the US, of course, iOS and Android are going toe to toe. I mean, iOS is very popular here in the US, so just for clarification. So the types of mobile malware that exist, although my children go to Fairfax County Public Schools and they're getting fantastic grades and they're superb at math, I was not so fortunate. I went to public school in New Jersey, so my math skills aren't quite there. But even I recognize that these numbers add up to over 100%. But where I'm going with this is certain types of malware actually do multiple things. So that's why the numbers toggle higher. So the types of mobile malware that exist, these are things that will track the users. Sometimes the goal is to change specific settings so that a future payload can then be delivered later. There's things that will try to, as I mentioned previously, do a silent exfiltration of things that you've stored to the device, upload the photos. There's also a desire to send out messages like premium SMS messages, which they can monetize, so you actually get it on your phone bill to pay for. Also tracking users. So if you think about it, like I said, my 6-year-old has a mobile device, but some of the most vulnerable people, innocent people in Fairfax County, are tied to mobile devices that have geolocation enabled. So if malware can get on that device and track when a child's coming home from a bus stop or when a senior's going for a walk, And conversely, some of the most powerful people in Fairfax County. So if there are people that are senior leaders in government or corporate leadership, their calendar entries, where they're meeting, where there's convergence of senior leaders, all of these are factors to consider as well from an adversarial standpoint, if they're able to track location, some of these sensitive concerns around that. So let's talk about the W for when does it become active. Basically, when it's collected, mobile devices have unique identifier numbers. So finding out where the device is moving, tracking the users, sending out content, and then making types of device changes. So this is when the mobile malware actually engages and does something nefarious. So let's talk about specifically for Android where the mobile malware is found. On the iOS side, apps are taken from the iTunes store. And despite what happened recently with WeChat, which was up in the iTunes store, generally speaking, Apple does a good job of vetting what makes it to their store. And unless your iOS device, unless you've rooted or jailbroken it, you won't be able to install apps that don't come from that Apple-approved and Apple-managed store. Google likewise does a nice job with their Google Play Store of vetting and controlling and also removing apps if there's any type of malicious content. However, you can turn a setting on your Android device to say, allow me to download from app malls other than Google Play. And why would anyone do that? Well, sometimes you might receive from a colleague a productivity app. There might be a game that somebody says is fun and they'll send that to you. So there's all kinds of reasons why people do what they do, right? So sometimes people will actually change those settings and hit some of these app malls. But as you can see here, they will range from anywhere from 3% to 10% having malware for the apps that are offered in that store. And I'll even give an example here, living in Fairfax County. My children participate in different children's activities, sports and dancing and things like that. And sometimes the coach or the instructor will have a specific app associated with the schedule, the playing fields, rain delays, start times, things like that. And they'll send an email out to the parents saying, rather than having phone trees and calling everybody and emailing back and forth, what I'm going to do is let's all install this app. As the coach, I'll keep that app current. When you get home from work and you put your child in the car seat, you're ready to roll wheels and go somewhere, just check the app, make sure that everything's still on, and that way I can manage, just do that entry once and everybody can sync with it. And that's a great idea. That's why, like I said, I'm not a Luddite, I'm all for mobile. But my question is, once the season ends or the activity comes to an end, the dance class or what have you, how many parents uninstall the app when they're finished? And most people, our studies show, once something is installed on a mobile device, it's on that device for the life of the device, even if it's never used again. A lot of apps are used just one time, and then maybe that app's clean when it installs, but then over time, it's getting updates and maybe syncing. So it could even become nefarious over an interval of updates. But again, I don't recommend using these third-party app malls. So the growth of, like I mentioned before, it's not a case of the Rubik's Cube, sort of a fad. Mobile devices are here to stay. Various parts of the country are becoming, like the entire towns and things becoming, cities becoming Wi-Fi hotspots. You have multiple overlapping Wi-Fi networks. You have cellular, tower infrastructure, satellite infrastructure. So mobile's definitely here to stay, and there's prodigious economic growth for app developers. It truly is a profession where somebody who is let's say, a high school dropout could actually download the developers' kits. For Google, it's actually, I think it's all free. They've got YouTube videos to learn how to do app development. Somebody can get good with that within a year or two, could be making six figures and could live anywhere in Virginia and be able to be successful as an app developer. So there's prodigious growth. The most commonly used app right now is Facebook. I have nothing bad to say about Facebook, but will that be the case 5 years from now, 10 years from now? There's probably apps that are being developed today that are ideas and embryonic ideas in app developers' brains that later will be these crushing success. Think about the impact of Uber and some other mobile app-based technologies. So let's talk about why. Why is it developed? Well, they asked the the FBI most wanted list, one of the most famous bank robbers in US history, Willie Sutton, they finally caught him. The FBI always gets their man, and they said, Willie, why do you keep robbing banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. So if you look at NIST, within Department of Commerce, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, they put out special pubs, like call them the 800 series, that advise federal agencies, but also can be applicable to a state, local, county government, as well as corporate entities. But they put out guidance on securing IT infrastructure. And actually, on the cloud security guidance they actually have a section they dedicate to Willie Sutton's quote. And they say basically, so much of corporate America and government in America is now moving to the cloud. The federal government doing FedRAMP, state and local doing similar things. And just as Willie Sutton said, that's where the money is, that's where the attackers, they're thinking, the modern era Willie Suttons, they're not going to go like this into the bank with a ski mask on. That's really dangerous for them, right? What they're going to do is they're going to be outside of the US in some relatively unstable, ungoverned part of the world, but that has good internet connectivity, and they're trying to attack cloud infrastructure. So these are definitely concerns. So that's sort of the why they're developing it. Again, things like SMS messages, what we call madware, mobile adware, where advertisements are put up, and so it's monetized. So if you get some type of an ad, let's say you don't click on it, but it doesn't matter if everybody clicks on it. It only takes a certain percent to click. That runs up that click counter, and then that malware, that madware developer, they'll get paid by that vendor who wants people to drive traffic to his or her website. So that's sort of the way the monetization occurs of it. Also mention, things like stealing your banking information, personal information, even medical records. There are people who are getting medical procedures done with stolen medical ID. Also, if you think about two-factor authentication, if somebody can, if your password is compromised, you can get a new password, a new account can be created for you, but you don't get to have a new biology. So if your fingerprints are absconded, or your biometric readings, your heartbeat or retina scan, things like that, these are areas of real concern for these types of hacks. And then ransomware, if your device is locked and you're being told that you have to pay money through some online payment system to have your mobile device unlocked. And again, I talked about spam relay things, the iterating malicious emails and things that they're trying to monetize, and botnet operations where a cluster of computers are part of that activity, and mobile devices now being integrated into that. So I'd like to talk about mobile security IQ. I know the US federal government and state of Virginia and Fairfax County, as well as large and medium-sized businesses, as well as schools, all of these organizations over the last 10 years have done an excellent educate the workforce or educate the citizens or the students or what have you on good cyber hygiene practices. So I know when I go to work and I log into my work computer, I know if I get an email from someone I don't know, or let's say I know James. So let's say James emails me, but let's say his name is misspelled, or it says fairfaxcounty.com instead of or something, or Fairfax the I is missing. So I'm like, what the heck is this? It's a targeted spear phishing. So we've had this user awareness training where I say, that's not him, or I call him, I say, James, did you send me this? I know not to click on a hyperlink, I know not to open a PDF attachment. So that's why we're seeing those really good numbers. 90% are not clicking on it, 72% will make sure they have, at home or at work, some type of endpoint security on their system, and then not putting things up in the cloud. We know if it's sensitive not to put it up on Facebook or Instagram, things like that, or LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you. And we're also evaluating. We're doing our own organizational phishing tests, so to speak, having events like today's event with cybersecurity awareness. But the whole idea is to educate and make sure that the workforce is part of the solution, not part of the problem. Now, all of this is good news, and I'm really happy about it. And now's the bad news. When it comes to the mobile devices, right? I've got my Android and I have my iPhone. For some reason, all that caution and that the abandon to the wind. So what we're seeing is a precipitous drop where users on their smartphone or their tablet, they are opening attachments and clicking on links from email sources they don't know. They're not putting any type of protective software on these systems. And they are, for some reason, if they're on their personal device, they feel more comfortable uploading it to different file shares and cloud sources. So that's discouraging. But what I learned early in my career, if you go to important people with a problem, go to them also with a solution, especially if you can think of one. So you're not just being negative, you're coming up with something. So here's my advice. Those of you involved in cyber policy within Fairfax County, and also amongst your family and your friends and those that you live with, those you care about in the various community circles that you travel in, continue to keep the message up top to be safe on your PC, on your laptop, but also let's start really recapitulating that same message around mobile device security. So I think if there's enough user awareness training, there'll be convergence where both of those numbers, top and bottom, will reflect those higher numbers. And by the way, 90, 72, and 78, there's still areas for improvement there as well. So I want to talk a little bit about Instagram. I have nothing negative to say about Instagram. What I want to say is the concept of hitting likes. It is a normal and a healthy part of human psychology that you want people to like you, to enjoy working with you, things like that. Family and friends. So it's a good feeling, if you have a picture of a kitten that you just bought and the kitten's drinking out of a little bottle and you're holding it or something like that. If you get 73 likes within 2 days, it leaves you with a good feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. But malicious actors who develop malware for mobile devices, they'll prey on the good in us, the good in human nature, to do nefarious things. So here is, my animation didn't work here. Hold on. My slide is doing something funny. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so I apologize, there's a little technical glitch, but there was an app developed called InstLike. And if you look at it, it actually hit the top of the charts. And what InstLike, it's not associated with Instagram, but it used the same sort of fonts and coloration, that same light blue palette, to make it have the same look and feel as Instagram, to make it appear as if it was like an embedded, maybe a new feature or plugin for Instagram. And what it basically said was, if you sign up for this, any picture you post on Instagram, we can configure it that you'll automatically get 20 likes. If you want to have more likes, like you want to have 500 likes, give us your credit card information, and we'll have this sort of bot operation spike your likes so that you get 500 likes. And as I showed, it actually became one of the top apps on the App Store. And what you may be able to see here is some of the fine print in the bottom right. It says you have to enter all of your user account information, your username, password, a bunch of other things. And it has the legalese, no offense to attorneys here, I have attorneys in my family, a great industry, but has the legalese text that says, we don't steal your account information. So it makes a promise, but it does. This is a malware developer. So again, malware doesn't come with a black cloak on and the tilted sinister hat and that sort of thing. It's not obvious. It masquerades as something quite nice, something that will prey on human nature. And there was a tremendous amount of people installed this and were impacted by it in a negative way. So here's kind of a fun one that I think you almost don't feel quite as sorry for people who fell for this as you might feel sorry for people with the InstLike. But here's a malware app that actually you receive an invite for it and it says, no more do you need to charge your smartphone or your tablet. Simply lay it by a windowsill or put it in the dash of your car while you're driving. It will activate a solar panel and it will charge it through solar. So most people don't fall for that, but if you do fall for it, it then will go into your mail system and it will send to all of your contacts an invitation from you, from your account, encouraging your people in your contacts to install this as well. So we also saw this app was actually highly successful as well. So the whole idea of how does the mobile malware get on your device? We talked about the app stores and downloading these things. And, and all of these technologies are, of course, up in public cloud. But also if you receive emails that either have a hyperlink that you click on. Now, it might direct you to a web page that in and of itself has no malware on it. But then there might be iframes embedded within that website that if you then go one deeper and click on that, bam, that's where they got you. And they'll take advantage of some types of exploits on your system. And then also opening email attachments and such. So here we're seeing the chart, the overall trend in email where there's virus detected of all the global email activity that's going on. It's not like a radical spike, but we are seeing month over month a growth with this. And for those that are following along, I do apologize. These are slides that I added a little bit later, so I will make the slides available. So if you want to have these for your own keeping for research and such. But I don't think these slides are actually in the handout. So let's talk a little bit about digital extortion. So initially, when ransomware for PCs came out, the first few versions of it, for the most part, were law enforcement. They spoofed law enforcement. They said they were FBI or, for example, Fairfax County Police or something, customized for a certain population group. And what it would basically say is, you have copyrighted material that you've downloaded to your PC, whether it's movies that are pirated, that they're not, it's like not really Netflix, it's something else, things of that nature, or you have some imagery that is not for whatever reason legal to have, or you have searches for terrorist related things, or any number of things, and it basically said, I am the FBI or I am the police department. You have to pay a fine because you broke the law with this. So here's the method to pay the fine. So once you pay the fine, your computer will be unlocked, and then don't do it again. Now, some of the malware developers will unlock your system. Some will, some won't. It really doesn't matter. The bottom line is that's a form of extortion, and that person who is scared, they don't want. And it also gives a warning. It'll say, "We will come to your home and arrest you if you don't pay this fine." So again, some won't engage that malware, but it doesn't require. It's like a big fishing net, right? They're not trying to get everyone, they're just trying to get a certain percent. So the wider net you cast, the more people will follow the prescribed action, the more you monetize the malicious activity. So we're just seeing tremendous growth with this, and specifically with the ransomware. And initially it was also, all of it was in English, targeted to an English-speaking audience. But now we've seen globally where there's very niche development that will tie in with certain online payment systems that are unique to certain parts of the world. They might be in specific languages. We even saw some targeted ransomware being developed that was in Arabic, that was a specific dialect for just a specific, I think it was in the Palestinian Authority area, and it was using an online payment mechanism that people there who had mobile devices would be familiar with. So where there's money to be made, they'll do their research, right? And again, like going to where the ball's going, they recognize that they can make money very quick hits, especially if they target certain groups that traditionally have not been targeted with these types of ransomware attacks, that they can quickly iterate and quote unquote make a buck relatively quickly. So again, a tremendous growth, 113% increase in 2014. So let's talk about the first piece of ransomware that actually targeted smartphones, this Android.SimpLocker. And what it would do, it would lock up your Android. It would also take, it was the law enforcement theme to get you to pay. And then it also would take over your camera, and it would snap your photo. So it would say, we know you have these videos or what have you that aren't legal, and we just took your picture. You're very much busted. So it'll take a picture of your face. As you click on it to see what they're telling you, it'll turn the camera around and snap your picture. So pretty rigorous, robust malware development. And that took a lot of effort, a lot of smart engineering to build an app, a malicious app like this. So, our research has done a tremendous insight analysis into the mobile app development, and you can again, for your reference, you can look at some of the statistical models. But the key takeaway here is there is no let up in sight. It's not like mobile devices there's going to be some stabilization, and then the malicious malware that's developed for mobile devices and things that are designed to scrape memory out of cloud architecture will be in decline. Again, the whole Willie Sutton thing, as a society, we're moving to cloud, we're doing mobile, we're doing Internet of Things. So the malware developers are fully aware of that, and that's where their development efforts are, and that's why we're seeing the large growth year over year. And the other thing just to consider, when I say that there's growth, it's not like, so we're in 2015, the malware that's developed this year is in addition to all the malware that's out there that was developed 2014, 2013, et cetera, going back. It's not like each year the malware community, even though there really isn't one organized community, but it's not like they delete or make the legacy malware go away. They just keep iterating because they keep fine-tuning it as mobile device hardware and software keeps iterating. But if somebody's working on a legacy version, either of the hardware or the operating system or the apps or some combination of those, that legacy malware still out there can still have quite an impact. So with the time I have left, I'd like to talk about Internet of Things. And again, all of these things tie back into storing all of your data up on the cloud. So if you think about it, the people have the bands with their health tracking, blood pressure, glucose, sleep patterns, exercise, physical location, activities, and inactivity, where are you stationary? There's Internet of Things devices in a home. How many times does a refrigerator door open and close? Who's adjusting the thermostat? What is going on with garage door openers? All of these things help adversaries, if they've compromised these systems, determine your patterns of your life, patterns of your family members' lives, your health information, financial information, and it just goes on and on. And things, perhaps the things that could be used against you or embarrassing you. An interesting thing, and it could be used to harm you. So former Vice President Dick Cheney, getting into some advanced years in his life, had a pacemaker put in, and excuse me, and the pacemaker could receive updates, what we refer to as OTA, over-the-air updates. So the doctor could do a connection to the pacemaker and do some changes to the modulation or what have you of that pacemaker device. And then the Secret Service started looking at this, and other smart people in government, and they said, this opens up an opportunity for a cyber assassination. So he has a different pacemaker in now, one that does not receive any external communication. So as Cheney ages, if they need to change things, he would actually have to go under anesthesia and have sort of modular, have these things swapped out or adjusted in that manner. So if you think about it, and I was at a AFCEA, the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association, has some really good conference downtown and also here in Northern Virginia regarding some of the cybersecurity concerns around mobile devices and government IT. And there was a panel on healthcare, and somebody was discussing these sorts of things, and they said, when do we think there actually will be a successful cyber murder? That was a question. And the person on the panel who took the question said, here's my question back to you, how do we know it hasn't already happened? And that's a great question, because if somebody is having multiple health issues and they're in advanced years, if that person dies in their sleep, there's an autopsy done, okay, well the heart stopped beating and different things, and it could be written off for natural causes, when in reality it could have been some type of a cyber attack on some of their embedded biological systems. So these are, again, back to the Chinese blessing / curse. We live in interesting times. So just looking at what types of devices have been compromised, who thinks a refrigerator has been hacked? I see a few hands. Who thinks a baby monitor has been hacked? I see a few more hands. Who thinks both? Okay, see a lot of hands there. So the correct answer is the baby monitor. Although there was reporting saying the refrigerator was as well. So here's what happened with the baby monitor. There was a couple, Mr. and Ms. Schreck in Ohio. They're in their room asleep at night, and they have the baby's in the other room asleep, and the baby monitor's turned on. And Mr. Shrek hears a voice saying, "Hey, baby, wake up, baby. Hey, baby, look at me." And of course, he wakes up, he runs in the room. As he runs in, the camera starts following him and starts swearing at him. He gets very upset, he unplugs everything from the wall, and he calls the police. And there was some analysis done. That baby monitor had been compromised. So that's incredibly creepy when you think about it. The refrigerator, it was actually reported, I'm going to go forward and then back here. The refrigerator was reported in LA Times and other publications that it too had been compromised. But what had actually happened was there was a Wi-Fi router in the house that had left the default username and password. So the refrigerator was a network attached device, but the spam relay that got involved with that household. So the family had just gotten the refrigerator, it was brand new. So they did what's called causality. They said, we've never had any cyber events in our home. We get a new refrigerator. A couple days later, we're involved in a botnet operation. But it turns out that was a coincidence. They had the new refrigerator. It was actually the wireless router had been what was compromised. Also, we've had the issue where in the nation of Israel, which I give a lot of credits to our colleagues in Israel with taking cybersecurity very seriously. Their companies, their government, and home users and such. But even Israel was impacted in a big way. So there's traffic congestion, familiar probably to some of us here as well, but in the city of Haifa, and there's a tunnel. So there's the downtown business area, and then there's a lot of residential, and that tunnel during rush hour becomes very crowded. So from an anti-terrorism perspective, it's important to make sure that tunnel is secure. So there's certain safety monitors and making sure that there's no various types of attacks, and that could occur in that tunnel, whether it's gas or bio or kinetic or what have you. So all these sensors. So what happened was the tunnel software, and again, this is part of Internet of Things, and it was tied into cloud architecture, but it was compromised, and it was done as a test first. It was shut down for 8 minutes. So some systems are fail open, where they will, if security fails, the activity continues. Some are fail closed. If it fails, then it shuts it down. This was a fail closed system. So 8-minute traffic delay, and then it came back online. The next day, they shut it down for 8 hours. So it created lots of economic loss, things like that. And again, we talked about the routers in the home for Internet of Things and mobile devices being a big risk, because if you don't change the default username and password, you're susceptible to somebody sniffing your home network, finding that you've got that type of device, and then compromising that way. So within government, even if you don't think Internet of Things devices are part of your accreditation boundary, your network concerns that you're working on, if your workers are bringing those devices in, then they have increased that attack surface for your overall cyber defensive posture. So you can't sort of just turn the blind eye to it and say, I didn't authorize it, I didn't use it. If workers are bringing these devices into the workplace or at home, and these devices are part of the fabric of work, then they are something that logically should be addressed. Health apps, what we're seeing is a lot of users will use the same username and password for everything, their banking, their Facebook, what have you. So we're seeing a couple examples where medical information was compromised due to results of that. And if you think about medical providers, it used to be the relationship was you and your doctor, or if you went to the hospital, you and the doctor at the hospital. The records were physical paper files put in a filing cabinet, and if you stopped going to that doctor, over time they would just shred those records. Now with all the medical that's being cloud-based and being shared with government agencies, laboratories, vendor community integration, blood work labs and test environments and academic institutions, there's just a proliferation of where your medical record is stored up in these cloud architectures. So it's very concerning. What we're seeing, though, is around Internet of Things and mobile is a lot of users, even armed with all this knowledge and these areas of concern, they will install apps and quickly click through the permissions without really reading it or considering what they're agreeing to. And the whole idea is they want to get something free, either productivity or something for fun, which primary two reasons why people install things or use things. So last thing, and then I can open it up to questions and answer. What can be done about mobile malware, cloud security, Internet of Things security? I would encourage you to keep your devices that you're using updated and current, operating system as well as applications. Uninstall apps that you don't actually use. Do the proper vulnerability patching that the vendors encourage you to use. And be careful where you browse. Just like on your work computer, you wouldn't just do random Google searches and just click on every kind of link because you could infect the whole network. The same thing applies to your tablets and phones. So good cyber hygiene on your mobile devices. So safe and cautious browsing. Be selective in what types of apps you actually download. I'd recommend only getting from authorized stores like the iTunes and the Google Play. I will recapitulate what the Apple speaker said yesterday when I was in Wisconsin. He said, when it comes to rooting or jailbreaking your device, just don't do it. The benefits you may think you're getting, you are voiding your warranty and you're just opening yourself up to so many security risks. Also having screen locks, things like that. That way if your device, you turn around, you're in a coffee shop, your child's crying and you turn over, boom, somebody walks by, grabs your device. Even if you catch them, what are your options? Run in the parking lot and start a brawl. So it's better just make sure things are locked and within your line of sight. And then if you have specific apps within your trusted device, so you have a PIN to get into your device, but then those work-related apps and sensitive medical apps, financial things, make sure you have another unique username and password, so that if somebody shoulder surfs you like my child did, and they get your PIN, at least they won't get your sensitive information on that inside. And then you can also, if your device is lost or stolen, if you've saved the box, saved the serial number and the unique identifier, you can contact your telecommunications provider or the vendor and then have your device disabled, wiped, etc. So this sort of, this shows the model that iOS communicates directly to update, whereas Google has a few other steps in there. That's basically the same picture. So I'd like to thank you for your time. And
we'll open it up for questions and answers if anyone has any questions for Kevin.
Yes?
My router is several years old, connected to Verizon Fios. Does it update itself in any way in terms of security? Should I just automatically replace it every few years, figuring that should happen?
Let me ask you, did you buy it or did you lease it? So I would, but it is, you're doing this through Verizon. So I would bring that question to Verizon, but I would preface it by saying, as a customer, I'm very concerned about cyber defense of my home network. And can you transfer me to somebody who's really smart on that? Because so here's, and I don't work for Verizon, I don't want to misrepresent what they're going to answer. I believe if you ask the question that way, they're going to either, if you own it, they're going to try to sell you a more modern one, and I would suggest you upgrade it. It might be worth that $88 or something to have one that's more secure, more modern. If it's leasing, they should have already contacted you to say, hey, it's time to upgrade to something new, and then make sure you change any, as I mentioned, any of the defaults. Great question. In the back?
Can we wait till the mic gets up? So that
there's a mic. Mic is coming your way.
Security device application for the phone that we can install and scan for apps or malware?
Short answer, yes, I would. I want to be respectful. I was told not to promote certain, like my company has software that does that. But I would say do an analysis in the marketplace and have some endpoint security.
What do you think of apps like VMware? Can we, we have a virtual machine on the laptops. Can we have something like that for personal purposes or for children playing on the iPad to install on the mobile devices, something like that?
So there are multiple architectural models for mobile devices. If Fairfax County is using an MDM, mobile device management system, where certain apps will be specifically for work and they'll have, let's say, a checkbox in the corner saying that that's a secure app, and then the personal apps would be to the side. So for example, if somebody's using Facebook and they're using it on their either personal device or their Fairfax County issued device, if they're allowed to do personal work and put personal apps on that, the MDM regime the goal is to keep that separate. So the answer is yes, there's software that can do those types of functions, and that's recommended because it keeps what needs to be safe. It keeps an extra layer of security around that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll tell you, rather than me pointing, I'll let the gentleman with the mic because he can probably see best where to go.
What's your company doing about smart TVs? I saw the fridge thing and the baby monitor. What about smart TVs, other apps, smart watch? What kind of virus or malware protection can be put on those, or how do we protect those devices? Because they're just as vulnerable as a phone or a PC, and I would try to exploit that more so because I know that companies like yours probably don't have a product out to protect it.
Right. So I myself was an early adopter of the watch that has the sort of like the Dick Tracy watch you could talk into. I'm not wearing it today, but that integrated with Google and it saved cameras or pictures I took up to cloud. So that's all part of that Internet of Things that I mentioned. Now you're asking if there's specific software that could install on that miniaturized phone or that TV. And my answer, unfortunately, simply comes down to it depends, right? Some devices allow those types of things to be installed, some don't. And as there's more development and maturing of the market around Internet of Things, and as they're in the future, there will be exploits, and they will make the news, and the manufacturers are then going to have to open up their architecture to allow third-party security software to install and help manage that risk, or they're going to have to bake it into the mix and make it more secure, or a combination of both. But to answer your question, I think it depends on the device, the version, but I would suggest where possible, if you can add additional layers of security. So security is like the Russian Matryoshka doll, layer within layer within layer. What's referred to in the cyber industry as defense in depth, or killing malware at multiple points along the cyber kill chain, which is a phrase that coined by Lockheed Martin. I think they actually copyrighted it. But the whole idea is, you've got security functions and software running in your cloud architecture, in your data center, your servers, your workstation in the office, your tablets, your phones, and now to your point, things like smart TVs, wearable computing devices. There's even security concerns, cyber security concerns specific to drones, drone airspace integration. What if you have a wireless sniffing capability embedded within a drone, and let's say you have a large fence line, the wireless signal doesn't go beyond that, doesn't even reach the fence line. But if there's inclement weather, let's say like on a Thursday night at 4 a.m. and the drone, comes in and it has a silent mechanism to fly and it's high enough the guard shack doesn't recognize it, lands on the roof, could intercept wireless. So we do live in a brave new world. I mean, there's so many things, types of devices we now live in the IPv6 world where there's all of this network devices, and each one has their own attack surface.
Hi, I have a couple questions. Over here. Hi. Basic classes, also, if you think, I want to know basic classes. For someone like myself, I'm exhausted. I'm working for the county, I'm doing my job. I don't have time for all this. And I feel like my stuff's been hacked. Well, I know it has been. I've made hard copies of my Facebook being hacked. I've actually traced IP addresses to places locally in the city where someone is hacking my email. And I've approached those individuals and said, someone from this location has hacked my email. And if it doesn't stop, I'm going to report it. And I've been told, we got this report 6 months ago, and this detective said to contact him if that happens again. And there's a long backstory to that I don't want to get into, but I feel like some of that's abuse of authority. And there's a story there I'll talk to you individually if you'd like. But I'd like to know who to report that to, because I don't have a clue. My Facebook has been hacked. I recently tried to change the password. It stored the password and wouldn't let me erase it. You know how it'll populate a Gmail address? This was populating the password and then wouldn't let me erase it, so that whoever would get on that computer could just enter my email address and automatically enter. And this is home security.
So I'd like to take it. So one, I'm sorry to hear that these things have happened to you, but that's a great example for the rest of the audience and those watching on the recording here. Here's an example of a very dedicated county employee, does a good job, professionally competent, works hard, and for reasons that you may not even understand, your account sounds like plural, Facebook, Gmail, work
There's a
email.
lot of stuff going on.
All these things were compromised and creating wreaking havoc in your life, right? So to answer your question, what to do if you are a victim, each company that was involved, Facebook, I would report it to Facebook security. Google, Gmail, report it to Google security. Work email, report it to your information system security officer or your CISO here. The incident response team. If you suspect there's a cyber problem, speed is of the essence. The faster that you report something, the faster your security operations teams can, sort of get on top of it. And the other thing is, you have to, a lot of times you have to wipe devices, set them back to factory default to make sure that the malware, if it's embedded, if it's rooted your system, it's not, because you might uninstall the malicious app, but then, on the next reboot or after a certain period of time, like 24 hours or 1 week, it will reappear because it's actually left, things that will then spawn at a later, and malware define tempo. So sometimes you have to start over, and it's very painful. Your story reminds me very much of people that are victims of identity theft. Have their credit destroyed, people get surgery and buy cars and houses and boats around the world. Leveraging your credit score is trashed, and then you have to get attorneys and deal with all the credit agencies and try to expunge all these records. And I've never been a victim of that, but my understanding is a lot of people who are, they get to the very end of it and they're like, finally, my credit's restored, everything's good. And then there's that it's almost like, think of it like in biology or a virology study of viral infections. It's almost like some illnesses you catch and your immune system is victorious, you survive, and you have antibodies, you don't get sick again. But some things are chronic. So like your identity theft or some of these situations, the malicious code, you can sort of wipe it to a degree and then it'll just pop back up. And the other thing is, and I don't want to ask this question, but if you're doing something for the county that perhaps makes you a specific target, like if you're involved in something about first responder or some type of critical security for the county, or coordinating with federal or what have you, I would also be concerned, like, have you been personally targeted? Like, has an adversary identified you as somebody to go after, and they're using it, what we call APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, having some really dedicated adversaries trying to impact you. If that's the case, there's even more steps you would need to do to really lock down to make sure that you're not being impacted.
I'll be honest with you, I always feel like whatever's going on, I'm always like, I'm like seeing a bunch of suspicious stuff happening, but there's so much that I don't know that they would be way ahead of me. I contacted LifeLock, I put that on, because I figure if I were part of an investigation for someone else or something related, I don't care, investigate me. But if this has to do with, like you said, a cyber criminal or cyber attack or abuse of authority, well then, yeah, I do care. I don't want to be protected against it. So I figure I had identity theft protection through my insurance. However, they don't do anything unless something happens, unless you find something that happens. By that time, as you said, there's a lot more entailed. So then I just recently went to LifeLock because I believe they notify you of threats. And then for hacking my Facebook account, my children are grown, so I don't have to worry about anybody kidnapping anybody. If you want to know about my social life, well, have at it, I don't care. But my biggest concern would be opening credit cards,
Yep.
theft or something of that nature. So are there any basic classes or something that will walk you through? Okay, here's the basic security. Like, I've never passcoded my router, or, oh my God, this is just like so much,
I think Kevin will be available in the exhibitor area if you have further questions. So this conclude the session. I want to thank Kevin for sharing his knowledge today with us. Again, by all means, go out, register for the next session of the Security Awareness Day. The exhibitors are out front, and remember that there will be random raffle drawings between now and the next 10 minutes. So Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin, very much for
Thank you,
coming
James.
out
Really
and
appreciate
sharing
it.
your
Grateful
knowledge.
for that. Thank you.
Thank you.